here. Okay.
Well, thank you, Maria, for that introduction and for the invitation to be part of this symposium. It's an honour to be here today and presenting to you. And as you can see, my presentation today is on career adaptability and the subjective career. And what I'll be looking at through some of the research that I've done is whether career adaptability and the subjective career have some synergy between them, or whether in fact they are more separate. What I'll be looking at today is briefly at the historical perspective on the subjective career. I'll be looking at the difference between subjective and objective careers, and then looking at, through my research, synergy or separateness in the constructs. And I'll make a few concluding thoughts at the end of my presentation. As I was reading this, and one of the instructions from Maria was about looking at other fields and integrating different fields. So in my presentation today, I'm drawing on sociology, I'm drawing on literature from management, from organisational psychology, and also from our own field. And in the work of the sociologist Everett Hughes in 1958, he said that the difference between the objective and subjective career is in the eye of the beholder. And I thought that might be best illustrated through the stories of Simon, who was a client of mine, and I've adapted this story to protect Simon's confidentiality and identity. But Simon came to me in my career counselling practice, and he told me a story about, he worked in law, he was a very successful lawyer. He had done very, very well at school, he had done very, very well at university. He became a lawyer, he made his way up through the law firm, he had a very high salary, he had been made a partner, and he was earning a very, very high income. In actual fact, what Simon told me was about his objective career, which was more concerned about what we could observe. We could observe his salary, we could observe the positions in the firm, we could observe how well he had done in his work. They were the objective elements of his career, or the visible elements of his career. Simon, as with all of us, his life was multi-storied, and he told me another story, and he said, "I hate law." He told me a story about when he was at school, he collected insects, how he was very passionate about biology and things to do with the environment in secondary school, how he volunteered for the science department to go out into wetlands to look for rare frogs when he was at university, and how he hated law with a passion. And to emphasise that point to me, he said, "And don't tell me to do environmental law." That, in fact, was Simon's subjective career. It was less visible. His family didn't even know that Simon was extremely unhappy in his career in law. So his subjective career was more concerned with his subjective well-being and how he felt about his work, and he wanted a change. Career adaptability has been applied most often in terms of career success, career transition, and career as calling. And they're often where you will find the subjective career discussed, and often in the management and organisational psychology literature, and increasingly in our literature as well. And subjectively, and if we go back to the work of Hughes in 1937, even earlier than the quote that you saw before, he described career subjectively as a moving perspective. It's about the meaning that we attribute to the experiences that we have, and that perspective is not fixed, and that our direction and our destination is also not fixed. And I think you'll see some resonance in Hughes' 1937 work with our own work, especially in career construction theory today. He said quite succinctly, and I think this again has resonance with our theory as it's emerging today, in the course of a career the person finds his place, carries on his active life, and these are his words, even though they're not inclusive terms, his active life with the reference to other people, and interprets the meaning of life, the one life he has to live. So in actual fact, he was talking about the contextual location of careers and the meaning that people ascribe to their careers. More recently, though, we see the subjective career being discussed in relation to career construction theory and the work of Mark Savakis, talking about subjective career as emerging from thought or mental activity and constructing a story about one's work life and imposing meaning and direction, and those two words are very important, meaning and direction, on vocational behaviour. So if we think now about career adaptability, I've looked briefly at the subjective career and the objective career. If we move on to thinking about career adaptability, if we look in the field of management, it was about the ability for individuals to identify qualities that are critical to future performance and to make the personal changes to meet those needs. So adapting in terms of career construction theory is about bringing our inner needs, the affective things, the things that people can't necessarily see, into harmony with the outer opportunities. And most often the indicators of that, as I've said, are going to be success, satisfaction and well-being. So career adaptability is about the capacity to change. But more than that, it's about being competent to change and motivated to change, because change doesn't happen if we don't have the motivation to change. So it's about being willing and able. It's about being adaptive and adaptable, and it's about being ready and having the resources to implement that. And so we'll achieve better outcomes if we are willing and able to perform the behaviours necessary to address the changing conditions in which we live. And Mark Savakis in career construction theory has identified 4 important dimensions of adaptability: concern, control, curiosity and confidence. And those are basically the resources or strategies that individuals use to manage the tasks of their careers and the transitions and traumas they face as they construct their careers across life. And essentially it's described as becoming concerned about the future as a worker, increasing personal control over the vocational future, displaying curiosity in exploring possible selves, and strengthening confidence to pursue aspirations. In some research that Mark Watson and Jenny Bimrose and I did that was published in the Journal of Vocational Behaviour in 2012, we actually looked at career adaptability subjectively, and we worked out a set of qualitative descriptors for the 4 dimensions of career adaptability. Because our study was based on the careers of older women, we kept in the construct of cooperation, because women's careers are widely acknowledged as being relational, and we felt that that was very, very relevant to the analysis that we were doing. And what we did, we looked at where we'd identified adaptability in the most important transition of these women's careers, and we identified the constructs of curiosity, control, confidence, concern and cooperation. And you'll see here in on the screen examples from Sandra's story, and Sandra was 45 when I interviewed her and she was retired, and you'll see evidence of what she said that related to each of the dimensions. But you'll also see highlighted there evidence of how her subjective career permeated the comments that she was making about her career. So for example, she described when she was a young person, having just left school as a homeless young person who'd had to support herself for some years, having a job in a bank. I was bored in the bank, so I was applying for different jobs, and it did take me about 18 months to get the job that she then spent 25 years in before she retired. So the subjective career, being bored in the bank, related to actually taking some action to move herself on and find another option. She as a retired person, took a career in floristry, and she was thinking that she would enjoy floristry. And she was describing, though, taking control of that and saying, well, I am a bit nervous. The floristry course is going to need skills. I don't have commercial speed yet, so I'm really looking for work experience to get my speed up. Then I'll feel okay. So again, we see the subjective career and the objective career interfacing in the actions that she's taking, in the adaptable behaviours that she's demonstrating. And again, when she left her job, she knew she could leave the job. She felt confident about that because she'd done a financial plan. She knew she could support herself, but she said, I wanted it to be a positive ending, the subjective career coming through again. So if we think about Sandra's stories and the subjective career, there are 4 properties of the subjective career. One is about the duality of a career, both the publicly observable and the private, or the intrinsic or the subjective career, the interdependence between those, as we saw in the comments of Sandra, a time perspective, because Sandra's career had evolved over time, and multiple dimensions, that her career was related to her lifestyle. She had to do a financial plan before she could retire. She was learning again, and she was feeling very satisfied with what she was doing. And those properties can be applied in Super's theory, and Karpova, Arthur and Wilderom applied them to Super's theory in terms of concepts about role of self and society, bringing everything together in the person, the social forces and the personal forces. In terms of time, the stages that Super proposed in his theory, and the multiple dimensions of life roles that Super proposed. So we can see those dimensions from the management literature applying in terms of a significant career theory. So I was curious to know if in fact this was a developmental construct. So I went to some interviews that I've done with adolescents, and I coded those interviews using the adaptability descriptors that Jenny, Mark and I developed. And I had a look in, and I've got an example here of a year 11 boy aged 15 from a rural Australian school. And he expressed concern. He said, I always wanted to be an engineer. So he'd seen that because he felt it was an outlet for his creativity. So he wanted to be an engineer. He went for work experience and he said, I hated it. I found it sort of difficult and boring and just couldn't get into it at all. He said, he then went on to tell me another story about how he played trumpet in the school musical, and he remembered sitting in the orchestra pit and looking up at the stage and really wanting to be on stage. So he said, that's what I decided to do. So he took some control. So he expressed concern, he took some control. He auditioned for one of the lead roles, which he got, and he said, I was pretty happy and I just really loved every second. So again, you see the interface of the subjective and the objective career. He became curious then about where this interest in music and the school musical could take him. And he said, since I was in the music and I just loved that, I thought I'd really like to get into some job in music theatre. So again, he's looking to the future, but we see the interdependence of the subjective and the objective career. And he said, I'm going to try to find out stuff. So he was becoming more confident in his conviction that music theatre was the way to go. And he decided he would audition for a play in the town that he was lived in, and he was saying that he would have to give up football to do that because it's sort of what I want to do. So again, he was taking he was feeling confident about the movement that he was making. So his adaptation in terms of his aspirations was driven by his goals and his desire to harmonise what he felt were his inner needs, his creativity, his love of music, with what was available externally and what he was increasingly perceiving as available externally. I then thought, well, if career development, as we understand it, is a lifespan construct, is career adaptability evident in the career stories of children? So I went to some interviews of some primary school children that I interviewed, and interviews of their parents. And again, I coded those interviews for career adaptability using the descriptors that Mark and Jenny and I used, and then I coded it for subjectivity on the basis of whether it was concerned with emotions, feelings, whether it was to do with lifestyle, etc. And again, I saw the interface of the subjective and objective career coming through as in career adaptability. These are samples from different students where I saw them, and one of the things that Jenny and Mark and I found when we coded subjectively was that the dimensions of career adaptability are recursive, that they don't always occur independently, but they sometimes interrelate. Thank you. So we saw in the comments of these children that this little one said, "I'm wondering what it would like to be like to be a famous artist." So again, she's becoming concerned. She's seeing that she's going to need to do something in the future. Another little one said, policeman. She didn't want to be a policeman because policemen usually freak me out. So we've got the interface of the objective and the subjective career there. And a little one who I coded in relation to concern, control and curiosity, who said, "I thought I would really like to be a piano player. Stupid musical instrument. I don't want to play it anymore. I've been playing the piano for 5 years, and after a while it just got a bit boring, so I stopped playing." And the little boy who decided he didn't want to be a baker because as he put the cake in the mix master and he put the mix master on high, the cake went all over the wall, exploded in front of him, and he had to clean it up, and he said, "I just never liked baking." So again, we see his career being constructed objectively and subjectively. Interestingly, though, when I looked at what the parents' aspirations, occupational aspirations were for these children, they all spoke in terms of the subjective career, which suggests that parents are influencing children in relation to subjective careers. And when I asked the parents about their hopes for the child's future, and we've seen this repeatedly through the conference, all but 3 of the parents mentioned they wanted the child to be happy, or they mentioned happiness. So let's think about what that very quick run through of career adaptability, the objective career and the subjective career means in terms of whether career adaptability and the subjective career have some synergy or whether in fact they are separate. From the coding that I've done qualitatively and the reading that I've done, some of my concluding thoughts are that an interdisciplinary view of the subjective career and career adaptability is certainly very helpful. One of the things that Karpova, Arthur and Wilderom said that in the knowledge economy, people are choosing to follow internal self-generated guidelines for their careers. So they're not necessarily choosing objectively, they're following their subjective career in some of the choices that they make. And I think that that's very, very important. It's to do with meaning and what's important to them. So there's an intertwining of occupational life with other aspects of life, which we know as our theories have become more holistic. So the career decisions that we see people make may not seem rational to us, but they may be rational to the person in occupational terms because they're making decisions on the basis of their subjective careers. So there's the inseparability of the objective and the subjective career, and I think that's very important for us to think about in our work. From my research and my coding of children's, adolescents and older women's interviews, it suggests to me that the subjective career is also a lifespan construct. It suggests to me that there is a synergy between the objective career, the subjective career and career adaptability. From the work that I've done, it seems that conversation and dialogue enables expression of that synergy. And it seems to me that the narrative forms of counselling that are emerging is well placed to harness the synergy to construct meaningful careers that are based on the interdependence between the subjective career and the objective career. But my research and what I've done for this presentation is very preliminary work. We need to know more. And from my research, it seems that qualitative research in its various forms may be a useful way of exploring the synergy between the objective career, which has been the focus of much of our field's history, the subjective career, which is increasingly being acknowledged in our field, and career adaptability, which is now increasingly recognised as being critical to the way people construct their careers. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.